Hi, I'm Max Russell from the Thriving Cities Initiative, a partnership pilot program between Doughnut Economics Action Lab, C40 Cities, and Circle Economy. So you want to bring Doughnut thinking into your city's strategies and initiatives? Well, in this video, we'll run through an example of how to use the City Portrait Canvas to create city strategies in a holistic way. Through the Thriving Cities Initiative, we've worked with pioneering cities to downscale the doughnut, creating the first city portraits. The city portrait has been developed to provide a holistic snapshot of the city and its impact across its four lenses, arising when you combine social and ecological domains at both local and global scales. For this workshop exercise, we've created the City Portrait Canvas, a conceptual framework of the city portrait. City changemakers can use the City Portrait Canvas as a thinking tool to analyse and refine new and existing city strategies, policies and programmes through four interconnected lenses. So, the first step is to get familiar with the City Portrait Canvas. Use the info sheet to get familiar with the dimensions that are explored by each of the four lenses. Secondly, think of a city strategy or initiative that you're working on and want to assess in a holistic way. If you're working as a group, understand and agree on the key components of what you're focusing on. So let's run through a hypothetical example. Let's say that my city is looking to renovate buildings in a residential area of the city. So I'll note down these key components of the strategy, noting that it's focused on improving energy efficiencies through the renovation of buildings in a residential neighbourhood. Once the strategy is clear, I'll turn to the City Portrait Canvas. And I'll write down the name of the strategy in the middle of the canvas inside the diamond shape. Now I'm going to dive deeper into the potential impacts of the strategy with the help of the four lenses of the City Portrait Canvas. Next, I'll analyse the strategy through the local social and local ecological lenses. Now, the local social lens reflects the essence of lived experience in the city, covering four key dimensions of the well-being of residents: being healthy, being connected, being enabled, and being empowered. While the local ecological lens highlights the quality of the local environment and the essential services it provides, from absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere to preventing soil erosion. First of all, I'm going to think about the possible positive impacts of the strategy locally. Use the words provided on each of the lenses to prompt and inspire your thinking. So since the main focus of the strategy is to provide better quality housing, I'll first note a positive impact to the housing dimension. Also, a core focus of the strategy is to improve energy efficiencies of buildings. So I'll note a positive impact here too. There are many possible positive local impacts, but for this demo, I'll leave it here with two. From this, I'm also then going to think about the possible negative impacts of my strategy locally, both direct and indirect. It's important to think about how to ensure that this strategy is affordable and equitable to all residents of the neighbourhood, regardless of income. So I'll add a red note to social equity to note the risk of unaffordability. Looking towards the local ecological lens, the construction activities during this renovation can also produce air pollution and reduce the air quality of the area. With this possible impact in mind, the activity also wants to encourage creative thinking around solutions. Take some time to think about this question. How could the strategy be designed and implemented to enhance its possible positive impact and minimise its possible negative ones? So, in order to try and minimise the risk of unaffordability, we could consider hosting community meetings with the City Council through a collaborative discussion to ensure that the strategy meets the needs of the local residents while minimising the risk of rising rents. What's more, there are a variety of solutions to improve the local air quality. For example, green roofs are not only able to improve local air quality, but can also improve the temperature of the local microclimate. Now, it's important to recognise that actions within cities can also have possible impacts globally, both socially and ecologically. For that, we'll analyse the strategy through the global lenses of the City Portrait Canvas. The global ecological lens explores how activities in cities can put pressures on the core planetary boundaries of the Earth, like climate change and biodiversity loss. The global social lens looks at the well-being of people worldwide based on the Sustainable Development Goals. Through globalized supply chains, our actions in cities can influence the well-being of people outside of the borders of the city. Now, I'm going to repeat a similar activity, but this time for the global lenses. Thinking of the global impacts of the strategy is something a little more difficult to do, since we're more used to focus on the local benefits a strategy might have. To help your discussions, think about the supply chains of the products and the materials and the services that are required for the strategy. So, from an ecological perspective, improving energy efficiencies in buildings can also help to reduce the neighbourhood's overall demand of energy, helping to mitigate the carbon emissions associated with the consumption of energy from fossil fuels. Again, looking through the supply chain associated with this strategy, the production of materials and products supports the creation of jobs through these supply chains. Next, think about the possible negative impacts of the strategy globally. Now, although renovation projects can improve the energy efficiencies of buildings, construction activities can generate waste from the discarded materials. On the social side, we could acknowledge that although jobs in the supply chain are created, often these jobs operate under difficult hours and unsafe conditions. So I'll note here the possible negative impact on health of people globally. Taking these notes into perspective, again, take some time to think about how the strategy can be designed to enhance its possible positive impacts and minimize its negative ones globally. So what could we do to minimize the waste generated by the strategy? For example, adopting practices of the circular economy such as modular construction can minimize some of these negative global ecological impacts. What's more, to ensure that the strategy also contributes to the well-being of people worldwide, creating procurement criteria around labour standards to assess material supplies could be added. Remember, be creative in this session. So, zooming out to look at all four lenses of the city portrait canvas, we can see a diversity of possible impacts, both positive and negative. To create thriving strategies, it's important to explore how these dimensions connect and interact with one another. In this next step, I'll think about the interconnections between the four lenses and draw lines between each of the lenses to indicate either a positive or a negative dynamic. For one such positive interconnection, green roofs can decrease the urban heat island effect and improve local air temperature, which also has a positive impact on the health of the local residents, as well as absorbing carbon emissions. However, with the inclusion of circular economy practices and higher procurement criteria, I'm also aware that in the short term, this could unintentionally raise the cost of housing prices and rents. With these dynamics in mind, again, think about how the strategy could be designed and implemented to reinforce the positive interconnections and minimize the negative. For example, I know that although costs may increase in the short term, costs over the life cycle of the building are likely to be lower. Therefore, we could consider a life cycle costing approach to this project to ensure that upfront costs are not passed on as higher rents. So, taking a step back, we've analysed the possible positive and negative impacts of the city strategy over the four lenses of the city portrait canvas, and have pinpointed some opportunities to enhance the strategy from a holistic perspective. Finally, let's return to the city strategy worksheet to summarise the key insights and possible changes to the strategy that were identified in the previous steps. So viewing the strategy as a whole, we can see that using the city portrait canvas has allowed us to take a holistic perspective to designing city strategies, programs and initiatives to benefit the well-being of people and the planet, both within the city as well as globally. We're really excited to see how you use this tool to support the creation of your city's thriving future.